Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Whatever time it is when you hear this message, I pray that you're poised to receive, to accept, and to respond to words of wisdom. Ashe. Today, I want to share a really important lesson on sacrifice. Okay. And this is in the wake of um, contemplating some of the most important obstacles to our growth and transformation and our ability to really take advantage of the wisdom of Ifa and the wisdom of Orisha. Part of our experience in the wake of colonization is that we have lodged in our mind the idea, the notion, the belief that sacrifice is optional. We have either if we were Christian, once upon a time you practiced Christianity or not, just built into the social psychology of American culture is the idea that sacrifice is optional. You don't really have to sacrifice. Okay. And so even amongst people who practice Orisha lifestyle, you'll find that there is this lingering under tone of eventually sacrifice won't be necessary. At some point, I will outgrow the need to sacrifice, or we as a collective, our tradition will grow out of, will transcend the need to make physical material sacrifice, right? And that's because of what Christianity teaches, right? That Jesus was the last sacrifice, and as a result, it might even be a sin. I don't know. If you people who are familiar with Christianity can educate me on that subject. Is sacrifice actually a sin for Christians? Because Jesus made the ultimate sacrifice, is it against the law to sacrifice? I don't know. But I know that the idea is deeply ingrained in the Western psyche. Okay. And then beyond that, however, the Western lifestyle constantly conditions you and reinforces this idea through consumerism. What do I mean? Consumerism separates you from the cycle of creation. Consumerism isolates you from the cycle of creation. As a result, you don't know the difference between a toy and a tomato, between a garage door and a goat. You don't really know the difference because both of those things, all of those things are what you go and buy with money at the market. You want a tomato, you go to the store. You want a truck, you go to the store. You want a computer, you go to the store. So as far as you're concerned, everything is acquired by you getting enough money and then going to the place and buying it. That's it. But a tomato is radically different than a computer. A goat is entirely different than a truck. Completely different. Why? Because the source, all of these organic materials, plants, animals, etc., have to be cultivated, have to be grown. They come from the earth. They are living material, living matter, living entities. Whereas the things that we construct, the inanimate objects, trucks, computers, cameras, cars, shoes, etc., all of those things, although they are originally sourced from the earth, we have to manufacture them in a whole even more elaborate process, right? But you who doesn't farm and who doesn't manufacture, you don't know. You don't know. And so that is what's reinforcing this idea that sacrifice is optional because you don't you don't you don't understand what goes into growing and cultivating a life. How many days it takes, how many pounds of this it takes to feed it, how many gallons of water, how much sunlight, etc. It's completely out. It's not even part of the equation for you. You wouldn't even know how to start to imagine it. And by extension, you don't know what it takes to generate a computer. How many tons of soil goes into mining the different minerals that make a computer or make a camera or make a car? How many gallons of water go into making a shirt or a pair of shoes or a pair of pants? How much water does it take? How much electricity goes into it? You have no idea. It's not even a concept for you, because all you do is go and get the money and buy the thing. And even increasingly, you don't even have money in your hand. You're using digital money. So the real process of creation is escaping you. And that is what's reinforcing this idea that sacrifice is optional. Because you don't really know what work goes into producing anything. This is crucial. This is crucial. This is one of the most important virtues of Orisha lifestyle for modern man and woman, is to bring you back into the cycle of life. You need to know intimately and understand and appreciate that every single thing that is before you today, if it is organic or if it is material, animate or inanimate, it all has been created, and all of the creation requires some kind of an exchange, right? This is the principle of Ifa. This is why Ifa, and I'm talking about Ifa, the practice and the discipline of Orumila's wisdom. Orumila is the owner of Ifa. Ifa is synonymous with sacrifice. Orumila only knows one thing, and that is sacrifice. The other deities have different kinds of powers and abilities, but Oromila's only real strength is what? Sacrifice. Oromila has wisdom and knowledge of how things are done, and then he knows what sacrifice is necessary in order to bring that thing into fruition. This is why the ancestors have brought Ifa back to us today. You need to understand the cycle of life. You need to know the life cycle of every single thing. And even if you don't know the details, it needs to be clear in your mind that everything is created. Everything is transformed from one state of being to another state of being. And all of those things require sacrifice. That's why when you look at Ifa, the corpus of Ifa, there are 256 Odu with thousands of verses each. And each one of those verses represents a pathway to fulfillment. There are millions of verses of Ifa. Every single verse of Ifa represents a pathway to fulfillment. And every single verse of Ifa, as vast and diverse as they all have one thing in common. They all say, you must sacrifice. If it was the tree, if it was the goat, if it was the rich man, if it was the poor man, if it was the soldier or the witch or the king or anybody, every single element of creation, because that's what Ifa talks about, how all the things were created. And every single one of those things had to sacrifice. There is no life without sacrifice. And there is no transformation without sacrifice. This is so important, most important for you, because at the end of the day, what you're really trying to do, this is what I know as your Babalawo of many years and of having consulted with many, many people. What I know you want is to change. You want to change. You want to improve. You want to get better. You want to make a more meaningful contribution. You want your life to have more meaning. All of that requires change. In order for you to have what you want and be who you really want to be, you have to change. And that's why Ifa matters, because Ifa is going to tell you want to go from point A to point B. And these are all of the things that you need to experience and encounter and do along the way in order to reach fulfillment. That is the pathway of transformation, and it requires change. Okay? So, in your Christian conditioning and in your consumerist lifestyle, you have the idea that somebody else has made the sacrifice for me and I can get things without going through the process of creation. That's working against you. Ifa is letting you know this is the reality. You want to go from point A to point B? Then you are going to have to change. You can't get better without changing. So you have to accept, oh, yeah, I got to be different. I got to do things differently. Right? That's the most important message of Ifa. No matter what direction you're coming from, no matter what angle, no matter what your starting point is, in order for you to reach fulfillment in this stage, you are going to have to sacrifice. And the sacrifice is what is emblematic of your change. But it's not just symbolic. It's not just symbolic, it's actual. Because you're going to have to appease the actual forces that are at play in your world. Now, in order for you to understand this, you're going to have to appreciate that all things that there is energy. We can know this from, we can start to borrow from the laws of physics. Everything has energy. Energy permeates everything. And energy cannot be destroyed. It can only be transformed. And to transform something, you have to change it. You have to release that energy. And you have to redirect that energy. You have to sacrifice. So everything involves sacrifice. Now, the Yoruba people understand this, or understood this particularly better in the times of antiquity. I'm going to tell you about the time I went to see the blacksmith. Early in my career, I was more interested in the crafts than, I was more in the vocational crafts than I was into, let's say, the spiritual crafts. So I was really into the blacksmiths and the clay and the weavers and things like that. So one day I went to the blacksmiths, to the smithy. It was a little tent, right? Like a tent, basically. And I'm talking about Nigeria, so it was hot outside, and it was oven hot inside this tent. And I'm talking to the blacksmith. He was very kind and generous and allowed me to talk to him. But classic Ogun, as I was talking to him, Ogun works and he never stops. And so the whole time I'm talking to the blacksmith, he's working. He's hammering, hammering, hammering. He's pulling things out of the fire. He's telling his son to get this and bring in that. He's hammering while we talk. And so I'm like, wow, this is really consistent with what I had read. So finally, I wanted to put it to the full test. I had asked him about the source of blacksmithing, who the original blacksmith was, what's the relationship between the blacksmith and Ogun. And he was confirming everything that I had been reading about and studying. And then finally I said, so where is Ogun? Where do you venerate Ogun? He says, I'm always venerating Ogun. He lifted up the thing that he was hammering on. He showed me this enormous stone. Right? I almost jumped up and in glee, because it was exactly what I had expected. The stone, which functions as his anvil, is the shrine for Ogun. That's where he gives his obi. That's where he gives his orobo. That's where he gives his oti. That's where he gives his epopupa. That's where he makes his offerings to Ogun, right there on the stone. So he's not separating his spiritual life from his vocational life, right? He is worshiping Ogun while he works, and he works the way Ogun works, constantly, relentlessly, bit by bit, hammering, striking the hammer while the iron is hot. right? So what that does is it reinforces for you the understanding that there isn't this huge distinction between the spirit world and the physical world, between the mundane and the metaphysical. That's not the original way of thinking and being. We recognize the spirit, the essence, the energy that permeates everything, and we're constantly using our insight and our ability and our own spirit to transform the environment around us. Okay. So there is no change without sacrifice. There is no improvement without change. They all go together. They're all inseparable from one another. And Oromila, who is the custodian, the owner of the wisdom of change, and gives the prescriptions for sacrifice that enable and facilitate change, is the one who is guiding us along the pathway of fate. You see, fate is the inevitable, the path of transformation. Fate is what you got to undergo in order to be transformed from one state of being to another. That's why it's Oromila who told Ogun how to become a blacksmith. He told Obalufon how to become a weaver. He told Obatala how to become a sculptor of clay, on and on. And Oromila, when you chose your destiny, Oromila told you how to become whatever it is that you already chose in the prenatal state. So that included, more importantly, that included some kind of sacrifice. Okay? So I want you to let go of the notion that sacrifice is optional. Sacrifice is integral to change, and change is absolutely necessary for improvement. Okay? This is a message, as always, when we talk about improvement, this is a lesson for the leaders because I'm looking for people who want to improve the world through positive influence. If you're one of those people, I want you to find out how I, through the Orisha Lifestyle Academy, can help you to live the medicine that will heal your life and heal the lives of those who you are destined to serve. Please visit me at obafemio.com or orishalifestyle.com, and let's start working together so that we can make good use of the sacrifice that was made by our ancestors in the time before time. When the ancestors come and they ask us what we did with their sacrifice, we want to be able to stand tall and with pride and confidence and tell them, I made very good use of your sacrifice. I look forward to working with you. Bye for now.